Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Paul. How are you?
I'm very well, and welcome all to part 8 of Football Book Corner. We used to call it Book Corner, but it can get a bit misconstrued, can't it, where it's just books, but it is football books. And the voice you can hear is Andy from myfootballbooks.com, a wonderful website, a wonderful page and presence on Facebook, Twitter, social medias, etc. So first and foremostly, for fans, for people, listeners that haven't heard the podcast before, briefly tell us what myfootballbooks.com is all about, Andy.
Right, well, hello, good evening, everyone, or good morning, whatever time you listen to us. So My Football Books is, well, if you love books, and it's right, it's called Football Book Corner. Basically, I've produced a website which sits very firmly in the category of football. So if you like football and you like football books, then the website that's which is basically built, it's coming up to 2 years actually, Paul, now. When I came up with an idea during COVID-19, I've always had a great love for football books and reading about the beautiful game. And I built a website on the back of a bit of spare time during the pandemic in the early stages, which seems a lifetime ago now, during the lockdown. And as I suppose as a one-stop shop for people to go to if they're looking for book recommendations, but also what books are coming out soon or what's recently come out, new releases, and to basically have it all in one place, really. So, and that's where, My Football Books, the website, came from. So, and I've built it over those 24 months now, and put it into various categories of like books about the history of the game, about the players, biographies, autobiographies, managers, about the various leagues, and obviously international football as well. So covering all the cups, and including the World Cup, which is obviously only a few months away now, so 4 months away. It's going to be a bit odd it being in the autumn and winter time, but there we go. It's the way of the world, I guess.
Well, you know me, I'm all over the place. I'm random. We have no thread. We have no script. We just sit and talk football books. I've picked 10 football books, and I've got to say, author of the month this week is Paul Whittle, and his wonderful book, Before the Premier League, a history of the football league's last decades. Lovely pictures on the front and fantastic, iconic Browne ball. So I'm going to be catching up with Paul a little bit later in the podcast. He is my author of the month. I always pick an author of the month, and I've picked about 10 books, and I've tried to get a little bit of a thread to my group of books. So I'm sure I'm going to go off at a tangent. I just do want to mention that your bookmarks, your mugs, and your fantastic newsletter. So guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to myfootballbooks.com. And he does undersell himself. He promotes so many fantastic football books. We have a group as well that I post various books into that group as well. And Andy has had a magnificent presence on social media for a couple of years now. So well done, sir. What's your first book? I'm going international a little bit tonight.
Oh, are you? Okay, excellent. Yeah. We're going worldwide, are we? Travelling the globe?
No, I'm going to England.
Oh, right, okay. Well, I'll go a bit further afield then, but one of my first books, so thank you for mentioning the newsletter as well. So when in the newsletter, I tend to feature the new releases that's coming soon, but also I always include their free recommended reads, and I alternate it every month. But one of them I recommended is Behind the Curtain. It's a book that's been out for a number of years. It's written by the great Jonathan Wilson, one of the great authors out there. And Beneath the Curtain, it's about the subtitle Travels in Eastern European Football. It's a tremendous read, as every book basically Jonathan Wilson comes out with. But it's basically about football behind the Iron Curtain. And Jonathan Wilson travelled extensively behind the old Iron Curtain, viewing what life is like behind the fall of the Berlin Wall, and through the lens of football. And shows how the beautiful game in the East has been, opened up to like the free market and how it's changed, really. And it's quite interesting when you read it back as well, and you think about what's the current, dynamics in what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, etc. And you see how football is, so popular in that area of the world. It has been for a long time, because it also refers to, when you think of Hungary's the golden squad of the early 50s. Again, Jonathan Wilson's wrote a separate book about the names heard long ago, which talks in more depth about that book. About that team. It was actually only I think now it was last week. It was the anniversary of the miracle of Browne, where obviously they lost out to West Germany in strange circumstances.
Very strange circumstances. They were robbed. Yeah. I think it's fair to say that they were robbed. The German national team had some substance at half time. They've admitted to that. We don't know what it was. Yeah. And also when Puskas scored the goal that was ruled out for offside, there's no actual record of it because the camera stopped at that moment. And Germany had already got beaten. I know there was a number of changes for the pool game. Not a game of pool like snooker, but they played it in pools in those days. And Hungary had beaten Germany 8-3 in an earlier game. And
that's it.
The German team, they were quite iconic. Yeah. If I'm absolutely honest, Adidas, I think, made arguably its first appearance in the World Cup finals. Their footwear, and Hungary were the golden team, having beaten England in 53 and 54 rather convincingly. You could argue then that Honved and Wolverhampton Wanderers was the advent of the Champions League as we know it today. And you're absolutely spot on. Jonathan has wrote a fantastic book, The Names Heard Long Ago. There's also another book by David Bailey, The Magical Magyares. I'm a big fan of Hungarian football. And I did see a post today on Twitter that somebody had posted up that not Hungary, but Holland were the greatest team not to win the World Cup. And I did comment and say, well, arguably in our lifetime, they were. Yeah. There is an argument that Brazil of 82, another wonderful book by Stuart Horsfield that talks about Brazil, and also he's got a book out about 1982, which is an overspill, isn't it, from all the information that he collated from that time. But I do think that if we are looking at the greatest team that didn't win the World Cup, I think with everything that we have, all the information that we have to hand in books and archives from YouTube, etc., Pathé News probably in those days, because it was a long time ago. I think unbelievably and undeniably, the Magical Magyares were the greatest team not to win the World Cup. And it does lead me nicely here. There is a nice little link. The Nearly Men by Aidan Williams. The allure, the eternal allure, the greatest teams that failed to win the World Cup. So a great little read there by Aidan. And Jonathan Wilson, I mean, I have listened to him on the radio. I'm not too enamoured with his football philosophy and how he likes to line England up. I vehemently disagree with that, but he's a fantastic writer. He does the Blizzard, doesn't he? And they have a great presence on social media as well. Angels with Dirty Faces, about Argentina. He has written some of the most fantastic books that are out there. So guys, check him out, Jonathan Wilson, a man who's probably forgotten more than I will ever know. about football, and a tremendous author, although I don't like his philosophy on football. But there you go.
Yeah.
Me.
He's got a remarkable way with words, and great authors could pull together words and just make it sound, I could never do a sentence as good as he can do. I could never do a full book as good as he can do a sentence. I mean, so it's just something about his style of writing. He's got a bit of a dry humour about him as well when you read some of his books. So, and in fact, he's got another book lined up. It's the first book he's had for a couple of years, it might be now, but he's got a book coming out in August, which is called Two Brothers, which is on Jack and Bobby Charlton. So there's been lots of books, as you well know, about the Charlton brothers, but I'll be interested to see what he writes about that. That's coming out in August. So, going off a tangent a little bit.
When you hear the word snap, it means that I've actually identified that as one of my picks. Two Brothers, okay. Jonathan Wilson, The Life and Times of Bobby and Jackie Charlton. But we had previously mentioned that in a podcast because you were saying probably in part 7 or even it might have been part 6. And I did say that there was another book about Bobby and Jack. And you did say there may well be, but there's another one coming out. So we do look forward to seeing and reading that book, or you will look forward to reading that book. I will probably buy it and just store it because I'm still on Grandad, what was football like in the 70s?
Really?
When you say, and I say he's a fantastic writer, I have these books. My wife's actually in Bournemouth. She's picking her aunt up, so I've got the run of the house. Nipper's just gone out to work. I've got football books all around the front room here, and I haven't read a word of any of them, but I just love football books. What have you read since our last podcast? Because it has been some time, and this is a nice little podcast to listen to because lots of people will be listening while they're on holiday, sitting around the pool, and some waiting to go on holiday. Hopefully they will get their planes to their destinations and would want something to read. So this is probably one of our most important podcasts that we've done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And well, keeping in the theme of the World Cup year, the book I've read recently is In the Heat of the Midday Sun. And again, it's another linkage to both the publisher, which is Pitch Publishing again, but also These Football Times. Yeah, it is. Stephen Scragg, So another prolific writer out there. He wrote that book, In the Heat of the Midday Sun. It's the indelible story of the 1986 World Cup. So, a great read. It's a tournament. It lives within the memory for a number of reasons, no more so than obviously on the front you've got Diego Maradona and that unforgettable game in the quarter-final, which, was both the amazing and the infamous, wasn't it, of the goals he scored. So probably one of the great goals, or iconic goals, wasn't it, that dribble. And then iconic in a different way, I forgot now, which was his first or second.
Shilton's mistake was his first. And then moments after he scored that goal, because everybody was calling him a cheating In fact, I went to a dinner when Terry Butcher was the speaker. And I was fortunate. I go there a lot of times. The Wollaston, the sports bar at Wollaston. Andy Blair's the host. I'll sit down with Andy and have something to eat. Terry was the speaker, as I said. So he was there on the table and was talking to him. And trust me, he still hates Diego Maradona for that day.
Yeah.
He has no time. He hasn't forgiven Maradona. But when you look at Shilton's 6'1", 6'2". Diego's about 5'5". How the hell does he beat him in the air? It is quite incredible. But, there you go. And I do remember Diego not scoring, but on a similar run. He went on in 1980 when Argentina come over to Wembley. Almost scored, and that would have been a carbon copy of that goal. But for me, Maradona is the greatest player that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And some of the goals that he scored during that 86 World Cup. I remember one he scored against Belgium when he almost, as he was wheeling away, kept his balance. He had a tremendous balance, centre of gravity, etc. Either foot, that left foot was sublime, but his right foot wasn't bad as well. And Diego, it's unfair to say he won that World Cup on his own, but I think if Maradona didn't play, Argentina didn't win. He was the most instrumental player I've ever seen in a team that's won the World Cup. You could argue Cruyff in '74, but I think that Dutch team, and Gary Becker has wrote a fantastic book, The Beautiful Bridesmaids Dressed in Orange. But the Dutch team was a far greater team than Argentina were in '86, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, it's probably the difference is like we're referring back to earlier. They were the nearly men, they were one of the nearly men. So the fact that Argentina went on to win it is probably what makes it slightly different, isn't it, in Diego Maradona, in terms of memories, etc. But no, I agree with you in terms of the actual team itself. It's iconic, isn't it? But it's a great read. It does recall excellently that Mexico '86 and reminds you of things that I forgot or didn't know really. But there was a devastating earthquake just 8 months before they actually kicked off. So it was a miracle that the iconic Stadio Azteca Stadium was able to be the venue of Maradona's greatest and most infamous hours. So so as ever with Stephen Scraggan, certainly his books, he always puts an extra thing to it that makes you think, I didn't know about that. So and that's what gives it a more rounded story. But it's like it says on the back, it's a love letter to the 1986 World Cup, and like those guys at the Football Times have got a way with words, haven't they? So they really get to the heart of what makes it the beautiful game.
They certainly have. I'm just looking at the inside cover of the Nearly Men. First chapter is about Argentina in 1930, because that was the first World Cup final in Uruguay. And Austria in 1934 were Nearly Men. That was a brilliant team, the Wunderbar team of Austria in '34, and there's a great book that tells you all about that Austrian wonder team that the great Jimmy Hogan had a lot to do with, as he did with Hungary, as he did with Germany, as he did with pretty much every nation in Europe. He taught the Europeans how to play football and was largely ignored by the English FA. And I've looked at an issue today with the FA that my pal's up. He's been sacked by Birmingham City. Marcus Bignett is on some trumped-up charge. And the FA are just as useless today as what they've ever been. If only somebody with intelligence run the English FA, we would be a hell of a lot better for it. And we'd be in a hell of a lot better position. And possibly we might even be in the Nearly Men book, because we never have been. We won it once on home soil, and we ain't been close since.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely. And the Nearly Men, it kind of links back to what we're talking about in Hungary, because it obviously refers to that in that book as well. So what I was just thinking about, you were talking about earlier, obviously that infamous goal that was disallowed by Puskas. You think the referee was, I forget his name, but he was English, wasn't he? So he was an English referee.
Not sure about
Hungary.
It wasn't Rouse, was it, that was the referee in that game?
No, I'll have to check it. But the name William Ling, was it something like that?
Not
I think
sure.
it was. It seems to ring a bell, but I'm pretty sure he's English. But So anyway, but So it's an excellent book, Nearly Men. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. Really I'm looking at the 70s. I'm going to go forward a couple of decades. I'm looking at Scotland in the 70s, the definitive account of Scotland football team 1970 to 79 by Ronnie McDevitt. A wonderful picture of Scotland. Ali MacLeod. Looks like a very young John Robertson. Graham Souness. And again, a very young Kenny Douglas with the Scotland team, judging by that kit and George Graham and Asa Hartford, Billy Lou. That is a 1974 picture of Scotland. What a great team they were. It might even be a little bit earlier than might be 72, 73, looking at that kit and not reading the book. Again, I buy the books, but don't read it. But I did say to you, there's no one that's written a definitive book on England in the 70s. That is a book that I would love to read. I have got a project going on, England's 100 Games of the 70s. And I thought you were going to tell me your project was you're going to write a book about it in the 70s then for a moment, Paul. I struggle to write a Christmas card, let alone a book. I'd love to. I'm hoping that somebody far more intelligent than me can write the book. I'd certainly like to help them with it, but I think if you can read a book, and you read lots of books, you could write a book. I buy lots of books, but I don't read the damn things. But I do get inspired by it. But I have, as a consequence of doing my project, I started off last year and left it on the back burner. But there's a lovely book here, England, the Ramsey Years. And I have the 3 books by Leo McKinstry, the Sir Alf, an outstanding biography, Sunday Times on the front. And then the next manager that followed Sir Alf, Don Revie, the biography by Christopher Evans, published by Bloomsbury. And then Ron Greenwood by Mike Miles, a biography of football's forgotten manager. I didn't realise he was centre-half for Chelsea when they won the league in 1955, wasn't he, Ron Greenwood? And on this day, Bobby Robson took over, didn't he? I noticed that you posted it up earlier on your Facebook page. So that brings us through to pretty much all the England football managers of the 60s through to the 90s, because Bobby was the manager going into Italia 90, and I did see that you posted it one night in Turin, because the 1990 World Cup after 86 was again a fantastic World Cup. What's your first memory of that World Cup in 1990?
The first memory, well, it's hard to go away from Gazza's tears, isn't it? That obviously screams out. But I think of Roger Miller. I always think of his celebration. It was an iconic kind of celebration, didn't he? In that jiggle in the corner flag, if you recall it. So if I remember rightly, did they beat it? It might have been the hostess. No, it was Argentina, wasn't it? I think when Roger Miller first did that celebration. I might be wrong. Someone out there is probably screaming at me that no, it's another team. But that book in particular, I would mention that One Night in Turin by Pete Davis. The original book was called All Played Out. It was badged as then One Night in Turin because there was a documentary that came out. But that book, One Night in Turin, or previously called All Played Out, is one of the really great books. And certainly, it's the inside story basically of Italia 90, where he meets the players, but also the journalists, hooligans. You know, there was hooligans obviously that time as well, and the fans. It's really brilliant because he had full access to the England squad, you know, and the manager Bobby Robson. It's an absolute. It's a really thrilling inside account of the summer when football. It became it was an iconic World Cup. And I suppose one other thing I was just thinking is obviously the back in June. You think of Pavarotti.
You see,
and that song, don't you?
This is my memory of Italia 90, Nessun Dorma and Luciano Pavarotti. Yeah. You know, he made opera sound sexy, cool, and down with the kids, didn't he? You know, you listen to that. As soon as Luciano belted out those first notes, you thought, what the hell? And I think it just captured Italy, because that's what, the Italians are all about, that passion. And I thought that it was a great World Cup, but you're right, that Gascoigne, when he was ruled out, had we have got there, and Chris Waddle, when I think he was aiming at a friend in the crowd, wasn't he, with that penalty kick, and again, we got...
Well, I don't know if he was in the crowd. I'm not sure if he was in the crowd or behind the actual stand. Behind the actual stadium, because it wasn't that far, didn't it?
Well, anyway. I was being kind. I think he was aiming at Mars.
Just to the left of it. So, no, absolutely. That Nessun Dorma, I remember that was the song, I'm pretty sure it was on the subtitles of BBC, wasn't it? And I'm sure I saw a clip on Twitter of it recently, and straight away it takes you back. And it's one of those, you can feel the hairs on the back of your neck, isn't it? It's a wonderful song, isn't it? Yeah, it made it popular, as you say.
I'd not heard it before.
No.
I'd never heard of Luciano Pavarotti. I'd never heard of Toto Schillaci. And the Italians did it again. They gave us Paolo Rossi in 1982. Who's Paolo Rossi? I think he'd just come off the back of a ban, hadn't he? For match fixing, did Paolo. And then we'd seen Toto Schillaci. All he looked as though he needed was one of those guitar cases. I think he come from Sicily. He looked a right mafiosi type, didn't he? But that's the Italians. They always come up with something special. And again, in my lifetime, I'm a little bit young to remember the 1970 World Cup finals. Although my first hero was Gordon Banks, I'm guessing it was probably that save, but I would have only been about 4, maybe 5. I remember the 1974 World Cup finals very well, 78 in Argentina extremely well, and then 82, obviously 86 and 90 as you're growing up. And then 94, it did come to a head when England didn't qualify. Did I not like that?
Yeah, that documentary, that was an iconic one. They really got into Graham Taylor, didn't they? It was a bit cruel, really. Some of that, the press he got at the time.
Where's Colton?
Yeah,
but that's what the press do. The press do go overboard. And, Graham Taylor wasn't the ideal choice. No, he was very unlucky because he had a lot of injured players, as England managers have always had at important times. Yeah. But that game against Holland, it really was the death knell. And there is a book, USA 94, about the World Cup 94, coming out, I've noticed, on your sites as well.
Yeah, again, out through Pitch Publishing. It's written by Matthew Evans. So, USA 94, he's subtitled The World Cup, the changed the game. So I was thinking about USA 94. It was only a few weeks back when the singer who was singing at the great, he was singing at the, I forget the lady's name, it's Diana Ross. Did she not, the one that missed the penalty?
Oh, God,
in the build-up.
The goal fell down, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. She completely tucked it wide, didn't she? So, but that was, again, another member of World Cup in many different ways, but also, not for England, but it was for Ireland, wasn't it? With Jackie Charlton's team at that time. So, but of course, I think it's one of those, because it was so water, the heat of it, and etc. Again, it's similar to like Mexico in '86, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of those. It's it never really took off though in many ways, did it? In America, as it was planned to be. I think it's more popular now, isn't it?
Very funny and strange country in terms of football, because when they had the NASL, which Alan and many of our great players went over and played in the NASL. During the 70s, and there are a couple of fabulous books that we did talk about in the last podcast about America. We will be talking, I'll bring them books out in a further podcast, because the World Cup is in Qatar this year. I believe there's a book about inside Qatar as well that I noticed on your site. But England do play America again, and Anthony Hudson is one of the coaches with the national team, so we'll be watching that space. But what happened? They lost the World Cup in 1986. I don't know how, but politically things do get given to nations that possibly shouldn't, and nations that possibly should don't get it. America should have got it then, but I'm guessing that with the game as big as it was and still is, American football, with the soccer ball, with the baseball, with the basketball, football was always played third, fourth, fifth fiddle in America, and it did struggle to get the cable networks involved. And I think that when they lost the World Cup, that was it. The NASL did pretty much fold. Well, it did fold, and then it has been resurrected with the Major League Soccer now, and America do look as though they're going places. And I have seen that, England are going to smash them. No, I think England will do well to draw with America. because Anthony Hudson is one hell of a coach, and like father, like son. So we will be, and I'm doing a project with Alan Hudson's American Dream. And we are going to be, we're going to be catching up with Anthony as well, and we're going to be following Anthony's success because he has followed in his father's footsteps. Anthony was born in Seattle. He is American, and he is the coach of the American national team. So going forward, we are going to be following that project as well. So we've talked a lot about World Cup books. Has anybody done the 1998 Nike sponsored World Cup? I'd like to know what really happened with Ronaldo.
Well, 1998 one. It doesn't ring a bell actually, because when you think of USA 94, there's another book that came out last month, which is 2002, which is when it went to Asia, of course, didn't it?
Yeah.
But 1998 doesn't ring a bell at the top of my. I think that's definitely going to be one that's still in. There's been lots of books that cover it. There's one that's coming out in September, which covers all the World Cups. Again, it's coming out through Pitch Pub. It's called The Making of the FIFA World Cup, and it picks out 75 moments, unforgettable moments from. I'm sure it includes like Maradona's Hand of God, etc. But nothing springs to mind that concentrates on 1998. I know there's a book written where I think it's around particular teams that competed in that tournament, not one on the tournament itself. But as we're well now, I'm sure someone will be doing that in the near future.
There is a wonderful book, The Story of the World Cup, The Essential Companion to Russia, 2018. Again, it's a book that I haven't read and up to 2018.
Oh, yes.
It's Brian Glanville, who's a phenomenal football writer, and it goes through all the World Cups, literally all of them, the games, the teams, write-ups, and that's my kind of book, because you're living through now what's going on, but and if I'm honest, with football, I'm more on the historical content. It's almost like the Bible. I'd rather look at the Old Testament than the New Testament. So up to what, about 1990, that is the Old Testament, and all the newy stuff. I'm not as bothered about the newy stuff as the old stuff, but I do love the 70s. I live in the 70s. My project, I've done a recent podcast, I've got to say as well. John McGovern, what a fantastic guest.
Oh, wow.
John was.
Yeah, wow.
Captain of Nottingham Forest, and it is out on all the platforms now, Spotify, Acast.
Excellent. I'll have to go back on that. I think I missed that one, if I'm honest, Paul.
Yeah, it's quality. John was absolutely fabulous. Didn't realise he's a big tennis fan as well. Yeah,
I met him a couple of times, John. So obviously being a Forest fan myself, I've had the pleasure of his company. So he's such a nice bloke, really down to earth kind of thing, and there's no airs or graces to him, and he's so down to earth. Yeah, I don't know how else to put it. So he's got some great stories as well. Obviously, of the great Brian Clough. But he was never the greatest footballer. And I think you'd say that as well. I'm pretty sure he said that when I sat at a discussion he did. He'd say he's not the greatest footballer, but he was vital to that team.
Yes.
The Forest team, wasn't it? And that's why Cloughie took him everywhere he went, because obviously he was in the Derby team as well, wasn't he, before that?
Yeah, Hartlepool.
And others.
Yeah,
and Hartlepool,
Hartlepool's Derby. He moved his whole family down to work to Derby. Then went to Nottingham Forest. Well, Leeds United first, of course. And got absolutely hounded at Leeds United. And he couldn't wait to get out of there and go to Nottingham. But great guy, tremendous podcast. Some lovely stories that John tells. And I did say that, for many people, you were always regarded as a kind of father and son relationship with Brian Clough.
Yeah.
But listen to the podcast and you'll get John's definitive answer to that. It didn't shock me, but I think it might shock a few. And there's another book I've just purchased, If Only Chris Shepherdson, The decline and fall of England as a superpower, a football superpower. Picture of Martin Peters, Peter Shilton and Paul Madeley on the front of it. Sadly, two of those players have passed away. And Peter's got black gloves on.
Right.
Yeah. So it does look as though, if I'm honest, it looks as though it's 1973. And that picture, I would say, is the Poland game. There was a lot of pictures taken about that game, and I remember when I'd done a podcast with Alan Clark, he said after that he pretty much didn't want to talk to anybody. He hardly slept. He was really cut up about that game when England didn't qualify for the 74 World Cup finals. But although I've got the books on Sir Alf, I've got the books on Don Revie, I've got the book on Ron Greenwood, I'm not a fan of either of those managers. I understand why they were England managers, but I'm not a fan because I think that they let the country down. Might be controversial, but none of them, like the Mavericks, they didn't play our best players, and as a consequence, we failed to qualify for the World Cup finals. And now that era's been scarred, I think, because people look back and say, well, what did we do in the 70s? We never qualified. Well, we didn't, because we didn't play the best players.
Yeah, and then we just touched on Brian Clough, because I'm biased a little bit of the Forest connection, but, the fact that he was not given that England job, was he, at that time, what might have been different? We'll never know, will we? So, obviously...
I remember talking to Ron Atkinson and asking him about that. And he said, I don't think Brian would have enjoyed being the England manager because he would have got bored. He liked the day-to-day management with the players. But what Ron said is, what they should have done is got to the World Cup finals and give the team to Cloughie to get them over the line. Brian would have done that. And I think, for me, today, I would sack Southgate. I've never been a fan of Southgate. He's too defensive. I don't like him. I'd sack him. I'd give Pep the job and say, take him to Qatar and win us the World Cup. We've got a great bunch of players, but I think, sadly, history will repeat itself because of the management, and I think the players that we've always had, but the management have always let the country down.
Yeah, it's a particular theme there, isn't it, going along down the years.
I think we can look at all of them. I wrote poems. It's called I Remember, and I look back at all the World Cups that I remember England's glorious failures. And there is a thread, and it does come down. I didn't realise until I started working with Uddy and TC how important managers are to players and to teams. Yeah. And I think that had we have had the best managers, as Simon Jordan always says, best in class, I think that we would have got the results, but sadly we didn't, and we haven't now. So good luck to England when we do play in Qatar this November. Yeah,
not far away at all. So can I just mention one book, because you mentioned it, because I've mentioned it, a couple of times, Brian Clough. There's another book, there's lots of books always of Brian Clough, but there's another one coming out in September called Alchemy. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's Brian Clough and Peter Taylor at the Hartlepool United.
Right.
So, so it's by a gentleman called Christopher Hull. It comes out, in the 15th of September. So obviously it's a few months away anyway yet, but that'll be an interesting read. So obviously in 62, Brian Clough, he suffered that career-threatening knee injury, didn't he? In the futile battle for fitness, but eventually retired. And he joined up with Peter Taylor, his ex-teammate, in managing the Cinderella Club of North East Football, as it says in the synopsis of the book. The Hartlepool United were next to bottom of the 4th division when they went in. But it looks an interesting story, and obviously that's the very start of his incredible managerial career. So, but just a link back to that. So that's coming out, in a few months' time.
Yeah,
should be an interesting read.
John talked about those days, linking up with Browne for the first time at Hartlepool. Yeah. But I was watching a podcast. It's a great Forest podcast. Can't remember the name of it now, but it is really good. I've watched a number of them podcasts, and John O'Hare was one of the guests. And John was up there at Sunderland, and Brian was up there, and he said yes. So he was there that game. I'm sure John said he was there that game when Brian had that injury that finished his career.
Right.
And he took, I'm sure John said on this podcast that Brian took the youth team at Sunderland for a bit because John O'Hare was there. And as a consequence, with Derby, he knew of John O'Hare, and then he brought John O'Hare down to Derby from Sunderland. So, you know, and people then have always said, like, John O'Hare and John McGovern, they must have been the teacher's pet and that. And John said, look, all it was a job. Brian brought me in to do jobs. That's what it was. Yeah. Football is a job. And I think fans do get carried away with their football club and their passion for their football club, and don't realise that for the players and the managers, it really is just a job. And if a manager knows someone that can do that job, he brings them in to do it. And when they can no longer do the job, he gets rid of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's football.
It is, in a nutshell. Yeah, you see plenty of, when the managers move, they tend to take certain players with them, don't they?
Absolutely, because they know.
It's happened throughout the years.
Yeah, they know, and they know that player can do that job, so that's what it's, football ain't rocket science. Do you remember a couple of podcasts ago when we were talking about that magnificent book from Richard Whitehead, The Cup? And number of books on the FA Cup. It was probably back April, May, because, we kind of have a little bit of a thread. This part 8 has been a World Cup because we didn't plan to have a thread, but we tend to go on a tangent and we find a thread. And Richard done that fantastic pictorial and written, because there was a lot of, it was pretty much pitched as pictorial, but there's so many brilliant writings in Richard's and stories about the FA Cup and some of the finals, etc., and phenomenal. And I said to you, has there ever been a book on the League Cup? And you said, no, I don't think there has.
No, I don't think there has. Not that I'm aware of. I remember looking after we finished our podcast on that, and I don't think I ever come across one.
My mate's writing it.
It's strange, isn't it?
My mate's writing it. Yeah. Rob
there
Carlos.
You go.
Yeah, Rob.
Who's that, sorry?
Rob Carlos. It's coming out, I believe, in September.
Right.
I think I was texting with him today, and I'm sure he said it's coming out September time.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and he's going through all the decades of, it's gonna be called, also known as, because the League Cup got called the Milk Cup, it got called the
Little Ones,
exactly, Rumbelows,
Carlin,
it's called everything, Kenny. It's a great title, also known as, and I said to him, look, through the podcast that I've done, working with Alan, working with TC, and done that one with John McGovern, etc., Kenny Hibbett, Pat Howard. All the lads have played in finals of the Cups through the 70s. So one by one I've gone round to them, and they've all agreed to, and they've all had some input into that period of time between 1970 and 1980. So I'm looking forward to that book coming out. There's some phenomenal tales. And I think none more than Nottingham Forest when they won the League Cup in 1978. When John Robertson scored the goal, and John O'Hare got tripped outside the box and a penalty was given. I love Peter Taylor. They got him on camera, didn't they? Just come out the dressing room with Robbo. Congratulations, Robbo, scoring the goal. Was it inside or outside the box? And he said, well, and then they said, well, Peter Taylor said, no, definitely it was inside the box. Well, Peter, we've got evidence that it was outside the box. He said, you've also got evidence that we won the cup.
Yes, exactly. He's brilliant one-liner, wasn't he?
Peter Taylor, super.
Great sense of humour. And I remember John Governor again talking about him, how he had that wonderful way of, Brian Clough could have been serious, but there was a certain dry wit about Peter Taylor, which kept them all laughing at times, and he kept them balanced, didn't he? So
that's
I remember
what
that
famously. Always said, didn't they? And when they had that fallout, and he said, I don't know what he's doing, but he always made me laugh. And he always made Cloughie laugh, always made him laugh. They were a great double act. Literally, I mean, they were as funny as, but also serious, and arguably the best managerial duo ever in the history of football. As we're talking about the history of football, I think it's a good time to have a chat with our author of the month.
Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Football Book Corner podcast, to give it its full title, Mr. Paul Whittle, author of the month. But before you talk about your wonderful book, Before the Premier League, A History of Football League's Last Decades, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into writing football books.
Well, thank you for having me on, first of all. It's a pleasure to be on. It's from a lifelong love of football, playing and watching as a kid, and just really being obsessed with everything about the game. For me, that was from the very late 70s, early 80s, and just that continued. I continued playing, watching various teams at first, and then my dad started taking me to Oldham Athletic in the early 80s, so that was my team. Got a few good years, and it's not been great since. And really, maybe about 10 years ago, I wasn't playing football anymore. Legs had gone, and I was reading quite a bit of football history, which I'd always been interested in. And I sort of had this idea for a book from the period really that I'd grown up with initially, and just had sort of different ideas, trying to get it into a good format. And this was what ended up as Before the Premier League. And then I started doing a blog as well, which I've really enjoyed. That's at the 1888 letter, just looking at different games and tournaments and different bits of football history, mainly English football league, but some international as well. Gone on Facebook and Twitter, just posting old, football anniversaries, birthdays, things like that, old matches. And I've really enjoyed doing the book, and got that out last year. And some people seem to enjoy it when they read it, which is the main thing for me. I didn't really have any idea that it was going to be a bestseller or anything like that. I'm just glad to have done it, and hope people who do read it enjoy it.
I do apologise because you have sent it me. I haven't read it yet, but it is almost like a Before the Premier League Bible, and there's some great interviews as well. What I like about the book, flicking through, you go through the decades, and there's some lovely interviews at the back, and there's a lot of facts. Like, for instance, Division 1 leading goal scorers, Tony Browne from 70-71, Francis Lee 71-72. I love things like that. I think that when you're writing books, them factual informations about the players that achieved notoriety, it's great to write about them, but it's great to have them facts: who scored the goals and who was the first of this and that and the other, and you go back in time and up to date, and there's some fabulous photographs in there as well. I love that one, Sealand Road, Chester, early 1990s. I mean, what a dump that was, wasn't it? You got all looks like buddleia growing out of the stands, and they clearly wasn't playing football back then. They'd moved on, but for the newbie football fan, all they see is these lovely modern all-seater stadium, but us older guys know that football wasn't like that back in the day.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, with everything, it's a balance as well. Yeah. I wanted some stats to be in there. In fact, at first I had quite a few more.
You're just breaking up a little bit, Paul.
Yeah, at first I had more stats, but I've just sort of I took a few out and just sort of got it to what I thought was a nice level, just to balance the rest of the book out. I really enjoyed doing the interviews. I got a good span of players right through from the early 60s up to the Premier League era, players that had played all through, players that played in different divisions, and they're basically giving them the chance to relate their experiences in the game. And yeah, the pictures as well. I contacted a few people because I just wanted a few to, capture some of that atmosphere. And as you say, the old terraces and a lot of the grounds that have either gone completely or have been changed, beyond recognition. Those are just some of the changes that we've seen in that time.
I love the longest sequence of consecutive scoring, 15 in 12 games. Bill Prendergast for Chester, 38-39 season. Longest unbeaten sequence, Nottingham Forest, 42 games. Hat-tricks there, Dixie Dean, 37. Tranmere, Everton, Notts County in England. And Division 1 in one season post-war, Jimmy Greaves, 6. Chelsea, 1960-61. No wonder Tony Curry was in tears when Jimmy Greaves left. I mean, Jimmy was just a one-off and the greatest player that we've ever seen. Youngest Football League players, oldest Football League players. You cover everything before the Premier League, and I think it's fantastic to have that all down in a book that people can purchase, that can read, and can remember, because those days should never be forgotten. I know that the modern game would like to eradicate all records and pretend that football did start in 1992, but as you've alluded to in your book, it was 1888 was the first football league, and we should never ever forget that.
No, absolutely. I've tried to do that justice. It's a long history. I didn't feel I was quite able to cover the whole history from 1888. I've more or less taken it. I've gone into it post-war, and then really from about 58, I really concentrate on it when it became the 4 national divisions. So for me, it's sort of going from there. The abolition of the minimum wage being a really massive thing that basically led to where we are now, and then just going through 60s, 70s, 80s, as you say, and looking at the major developments, the things that changed in television, and obviously the way that money changed the game, and different experiences of watching the game. The stadiums have changed, so much has changed, and it's definitely trying to do that justice. And we get frustrated when people talk about records since 1992, when there's over 100 years before that as you say, should never be ignored. And I'm just trying to bring some of that back, particularly that period that I remember growing up, that I think is often, the 80s are just seen as a grim time of hooliganism, low crowds, English clubs out of Europe. But I think there was a lot more going on there. There was a lot more competition in the league, and it was getting that way, but it wasn't totally dominated by money. And I'm just trying to, as I say, do justice to that period of English football.
Absolutely. A lovely picture of you on the back, born in Leeds at the start of the 73-74 season. Paul spent much time playing and watching football ever since, and he writes about the game's history at all the the1888letter.com. This is his first book. When's your second? And who's the pictures? Why the pictures on the front? And I says to Andy, I love the iconic brown football with the laces in it.
Yeah, I wanted to get that, and yeah, the picture of me. There's a few of me to choose from for football, so I just thought I'd get something in there. That's probably late 70s as well, and the ones on the front. There's one of Roker Park, which fantastic old ground. And that was taken by a chap that I know, John Dewhurst, who's also an author, writes a lot about Bradford football history. And this is from his own collection. He took quite a few during the 80s. So that's fantastic stand and ground that's now gone. And the second one was kindly provided to me by James Court, and that was actually taken by his dad, and that's at Molineux. But a very different looking Molineux.
Isn't it just?
Very early 90s, from the away terrace, big old terrace, looking out over the rest of the ground, which isn't in the best condition, to be fair to it. But there were two great pictures that people kindly provided to me that they'd taken themselves, or were family photographs, which are from that era.
And I think the Molineux is a great example of the modern game, how it's changed, because, as you said, they moved out. Sunderland moved out of Roker Park, went to Stadium of Light. Many teams have moved out of grounds and gone to pretty similar stadiums out of town. But the Wolves have stayed there at Molineux, and that picture is a fantastic example of how bad Wolves were then at that time and how far that one stand was away from the football pitch. I mean, I know the West Ham fans ain't very happy at London Stadium, although at the moment they're quite happy because they're winning. But you did need binoculars to sit in that stand on the side of the Molineux back in those days, didn't you?
Yeah, it's very, very bizarre, isn't it? They ran into some financial problems.
Yeah.
I think they wanted to move the whole ground in that direction and ran out of money. So yeah, it does look very, very strange. Quite a lot of teams. Chelsea at that time as well also had big problems and also had one, brand new stand, but the rest of the ground was not looking so great. Yeah, I think it's a real shame when teams move and lose all that history. Yeah. Sometimes you understand it, but as you say, a lot of the stadiums just look the same. They don't have the same feel to them. They don't have the history, and often they don't have the same atmosphere. I think those are all things that can be lost.
Absolutely, and I think as well what shouldn't be lost is lots of the football clubs, they had to sell their better players to finance stadium developments, whether it be a stand or the entire ground. And I think that when you look at Ipswich Town, a great example, you look at where they are today, that they sold so many players to finance Portman Road. Okay, yeah, they stayed there, but at what cost? And I know for a fact that Chelsea, to finance the East Stand in the 70s, they sold Alan Hudson and Peter Osgood. And it was an ongoing thing where clubs didn't have the greatest of, shall we say, business acumen, because when Alan Hudson was sold from Stoke City to Arsenal, that was as a direct result of the Butler's Lane stand falling down in the high winds in January 76, and Alan had to be sold because that stand wasn't insured. Wouldn't happen today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a real shame actually for Stoke, who had a great team at the time. I think Peter Shilton and Jimmy Greenhoff were also sold as a direct result as well. Yeah, it was. In some ways, that's a nice thing that clubs weren't quite so corporate and so business orientated. But yeah, I think they could be a little bit naive as well with that. And again, it's a balance. Obviously they want to be able to make money and compete. But I think sometimes modern football's obsessed with that more than anything, and it to me it takes a little bit away from the game that the richest clubs are always at the top and always winning. And you mentioned Ipswich Town. They were one of the best teams in the country, unlucky not to win the league, challenging for trophies. Without a big budget. Just good management under Bobby Robson, put together a good set of players, and you'd get that so much more, wouldn't you? With in the 70s, especially Derby and Nottingham Forest winning league titles. It's hard to imagine that happening now. You need a billionaire or mega billionaire to compete.
Yeah, it's almost an unrecognisable game. I love on page 56, progress of the British transfer record 61 to 92, June 61, Jerry Hitchins, Villa to Inter Milan, £85,000. I mean, it's just laughable, isn't it, when you look at the prices now of while this window is open, and you can buy any. I don't really want to seem disrespectful, but in the Premier League, any average Joe for about 25 million. And like in those days, you got an absolute world-class superstar for 85 grand. It's just bizarre. And 61, of course, wasn't that long ago.
No, relatively speaking. I mean, the wages as well as the transfer fees have just exploded, as we know. It's just unimaginable from a time when even even the best players, they weren't getting paid that much more than people in other professions, people in good jobs. And I think the fans related more to the players then, and now they're just totally removed. They're obviously celebrities, they're superstars, and you can't blame the players so much because who's going to turn that down? That's just the way it's gone. But I think it has removed some of that connection that fans had to players. And obviously there was a time when they really weren't paid enough. When the clubs had the maximum wage, they were able to basically keep players on a pittance. So again, it's that thing of balance that it changed, but then it just went further and further away from, I think, what was intended to keep a balance of the league and prevent a certain number of clubs just being that much bigger and richer than everyone else, that they were going to dominate the league. And I think we see now that that's what happens. When the money's totally uncontrolled, and you see smaller clubs, falling by the wayside. Macclesfield and Bury in recent years, Oldham have been on the brink of that for basically a Premier League player's couple of weeks' wages. You can't help feeling that's sort of gone too far, really.
Absolutely, and Oldham being now, of course, non-league and are the first club to hit. Well, I wouldn't say hit that status. It's it's been a race to the bottom, hasn't it, really, sadly, for Oldham Athletic. But the first team that played in the Premier League to play now non-league football, it just is incredible how that team, I mean, that wonderful side under Joe Royle and done so very, very well, is now as a non-league football team, club. How long did this labour of love take you?
It took quite a few actually to get it really in a format that I was happy with.
Yeah.
I mean, my main inspiration for it came by R.C. Churchill, which was called 60 Seasons of League Football, which actually went up to 1888.
You're just breaking up again. You're just breaking up. You're going a bit Dalek-y like Terry Curran used to in the old days of the Curran View.
I'll just go back to that. So my main inspiration for the book was a book that I found by someone called R.C. Churchill, which was 60 Seasons of League Football, which took it right from the start, 1888 up to 1958, and it sort of looked at the periods of the league in chunks divided by the world wars, but it had a lot of statistics for each club. And initially I had in mind something like that, and I had more statistics, as I say, but a lot of it's on the internet, a lot of it maybe people can find in other places. So I left them in. I left in a sort of section, as you've mentioned, which I think is important as well, but maybe a bit less emphasis on that and more on the interviews, which I wasn't expecting when I started the book. A friend of mine, we had a chat about the book generally, and he was saying, well, if you could get a couple of interviews, that'd be great. But I didn't really know how to go about it initially. But my friend who actually works for the FA put me in touch initially with Paul Davis, which was a fantastic way to start. League title winner, won virtually everything in the English game, and also Nigel Gleghorn, who had a great experience at different clubs, 500 odd games, and he'd started as a fireman, which I enjoyed hearing about. Went basically straight from the fire service to the first division, which is unheard of these days, and they were great interviewees. And from there, I was able to get in touch with a couple more people after that. So I got this nice balance, half a dozen players who played at different levels of the Football League and all that, great experiences, played at different clubs. Some of them had played in the North American League, which is quite interesting to hear about as well. So that part of it came maybe in the last couple of years. Paul Davis, I think I interviewed just before the first lockdown. I actually went to St George's Park to meet him, which was also quite an experience. And then after that, I was able to put it together reasonably quickly and get it out last year. So I mean, it's hopefully something that'll stand the test of time as well. It's not sort of limited to 2021 or 2022. It's meant to be a history that's there to either remind those of us who were there and maybe introduce people who weren't around to a little slice of how English football was before then.
Steve, I'm not familiar with this fella. Steve Hetsey.
Steve Hetsey, yeah, he'd had a long career. Never played at the top level, but he'd spent quite a long time with Reading.
Yeah.
Moved on to Blackpool, and then he played for Sunderland under Laurie McMenemy, which wasn't their best period, unfortunately. And he finished at Chester and then Colchester. And it's just interesting to hear from a player who didn't make the very top level, didn't make millions of pounds out of it, but he had a long career. He started very young. I think he was Reading's youngest ever player when he made his debut, and sort of talking about football in the 70s, how physical it was, some of the changes, and he's still involved also coaching and scouting and got involvement in the game. So he's got sort of a perspective on some of those changes that we've been talking about. And it's just interesting to me, he's talking about different managers. Jock Wallace was his manager at the end of his career, obviously Laurie McMenemy. Earlier than that, Maurice Evans at Reading, different characters that, I've obviously heard and read about, but, to hear a bit more about their styles and how players respond to different managers, it's really interesting to me as a fan.
Absolutely, and he played for Vancouver Whitecaps in the NASL in 1976. But I love the reference to Billy Whitehurst. And another player you're at Reading, Robin Friday. I mean, two legends of the Football League. Billy Whitehurst, without any fear of doubt, the hardest man that's ever played football. And Robin Friday, one of the greatest Mavericks. Lots of people would have heard of the name, but don't know who Robin Friday was. But I mean, if you could put a player's career and life on the silver screen, Robin Friday would be up there with the best of them, wouldn't he?
Yeah, there's a couple of books on him alone as well, aren't there? He's one of those characters that you just don't see in modern football, and that's something I mentioned in the book. And obviously you're talking regularly to Alan Hudson and Terry Curran, who are those sort of players that you really don't tend to come across. So many of them, Stan Bowles, Tony Curry, and they players who and Robin Friday is interesting because he never again got right to the top level, but he's like you say, he's sort of a legendary figure, isn't he? Cult figure in the game. Absolute maverick who maybe didn't make the most of his talent, but very well remembered.
But it just goes to show, doesn't it, that there's been so many players that have played football through the years, and you don't have to actually hit the highest height to be remembered. And Robin, you're right, there's a fantastic book, 2 parts, by Stuart Kane, who I've had the pleasure to do a podcast with, who wrote about and tells the story of Robin Friday, and some of those stories of Robin really are absolutely legendary.
Yeah, definitely things that you wouldn't get away with nowadays.
No, absolutely
in football.
Imagine that. Can you imagine, though, on a serious note, lots of the things that our Mavericks and players did back in those days? You look at the wokeness of football today, there are, and I think as a consequence, we haven't got the charismatic players and the characters because it's been knocked out of them. Probably one of the few that we have got, thankfully, is Jack Grealish, who is a throwback to the olden days. Thank God we still need people like that to look up to, watch playing football, admire them and thinking, go on, son, you're one of us.
Yeah, that's what people want to see generally when they're watching football as well. Someone who's going to do something a little bit different. And I think there are, it'd be crazy to say there haven't been improvements. The players are fantastic technically. They're obviously super fit. But if there was a criticism, it's that the game can be a bit stereotyped, that, people play the same way, that they're obviously so well coached, everything's so well drilled. There doesn't seem to be as much room for that sort of spontaneity, those skills, those players doing things off the cuff that you used to see a lot more. I used to love watching Glenn Hoddle when I was a kid. Fantastic passer of the ball, both feet, ahead of his time, really. Playing on terrible pitches, getting kicked about, and just had that extra level of skill that even not necessarily a fan of that team, as a player, you'd think just amazing to watch. And there were a lot, there were a few of those around in John Barnes, Chris Waddle, obviously Gaz a little bit later on. There were those sort of players still around, and there just seemed to be less of them.
And another lovely thing that we used to have in those days that we don't have today, players staying at a football club for almost their entire career. Steve Bull was probably the last one, and Matthew Letizia also with Southampton, bringing it up to date. But we had players like Derek Parkin, who holds the most appearances at Wolverhampton Wanderers, Kenny Ibbett second. We got Stevie Perryman at Tottenham Hotspur, Terry Payne at Southampton. These players done like over 700 games and playing at a good level of football as well. So it's something that you just wouldn't get today.
And I think it's another thing that the fans identified with a lot more as well, and especially in the lower divisions now, you get such a turnover of players on short-term contracts that it's a different team almost every year. The longest serving player will have been there 2-3 years, and it you don't feel the same connection again. You don't feel the same bond as when you had those long-serving career players. Paul Davis spent the best part of 2 decades with Arsenal. David O'Leary alongside him, Steve Perryman, people that you've mentioned. It just seemed to be a lot more widespread. Players staying basically for their career at the same club, and I don't know how much agents or the way contracts are negotiated have to do with it now, but it's another thing that seems to have lost a little bit of connection between fans and the clubs, the fact that the players move so often.
Absolutely. And at my club, we had a player, Jude Bellingham. I think he played about 20 games for Birmingham City.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot. We charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey, it's Danny Pellegrino from Everything Iconic. Ready to upgrade your style game without blowing your budget? Check out Quince. They've got all the good stuff, shirts and polos, activewear, and fine leather goods, all at 50 to 80% less than other high-end brands. And the best part? They're all about safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing. Get that luxury vibe without the luxury price tag. Hit up quince.com/upgrade for free shipping and 365-day returns on your next order. That's quince.com/upgrade.
We retired his shirt. Again, something that you look at, you just would never have had that back in the old days. It is just a bonkers game. And managers, you look at the sack race that you'll see on Sky TV. I mean, basically in our day, the sack race was you'd turn up as a parent and you'd enter the sack race with your kids, and that's their way of like looking at mum or dad and having a right laugh. But the seriousness of it now is, if you don't kick off a season, and shortly the teams will be kicking off a season, you lose your first 5 or 6 games in the Premier League, you're toast.
Yeah, it's that short term thing, and the rewards are so great, but also the danger if you get relegated that you're going to lose so much money, you're going to be stuck with players on the huge wages. Everyone's scared of that. So that, like you say, it's half a dozen games. I mean, is it Watford who seem to get through 4 or 5 managers a season? It's just crazy.
It just is bonkers, isn't it? For us older guys, it is absolutely crazy. In the olden days, you'd say that manager's been with us for 4 seasons. I mean, now they are with you for 4 seasons, but it's like August, spring, winter, and summer. Those are the 4 seasons that you're with them. It's just absolutely crazy. How do you get any continuity? How do you get any stability in your football club when you keep sacking the managers? Sir Alex Ferguson, a prime example, started off at Manchester United, you could say not on a good footing, but they backed him, and look at the success that Sir Alex brought to Manchester United. Alex Ferguson wouldn't have been Sir Alex these days. He'd have probably lasted a few games that have sacked him.
Yeah, definitely. By the late 80s, he'd have been gone, wouldn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
Couple of seasons where they were nowhere in the league, didn't win anything.
Shankly done the same as well when he started at Liverpool. Never won nothing at first, but built great sides at Liverpool Football Club. And them two of the greatest football clubs in world football, possibly might not have happened had it not been for the brilliance of the management and the intelligence of the people that run the football clubs.
They tended to leave the manager to it
they did.
Much more of an extent. I mean, a lot of the teams that I obviously mentioned in the book that are the great teams of certainly post-war English football, that you just associate them with the manager, don't you? Matt Busby at Manchester United, Shankly at Liverpool, Revie at Leeds, Clough, well, both Derby and Forest. The great managers. I mean, Clough must be the last one to have lasted that long at a single club. I hardly remembered a time when Clough wasn't the manager of Nottingham Forest, right up to the Premier League era, and that just it doesn't seem to happen.
No, absolutely.
Ferguson obviously being the exception.
What does happen is the owners of football clubs like to get the football boots on and turn up at the training ground. I remember Ron telling me about Doug Ellis. What the hell's going on here? He stuck him in the wall and he said to Sid, just fizz one past his right ear hole, and he soon buggered off then. Well, again, you didn't have that. They owned or run the club and let the manager manage the football club and the players play. Everybody had the roles. These days, the owners seem to want to do absolutely everything.
The owners seem to be the sort of personalities in their own right. And obviously there's a few chairmen, Ken Bates was notorious, Doug Ellis, as you mentioned, but they were the exception, really. I mean, for a long time, the chairman, they were just the people who ran the club effectively. They weren't looking for publicity.
We didn't know them, did we?
Yeah, exactly. We didn't know them. They were there to run the club as best they could, but leave the management to the manager. And now it seems a lot of them want the limelight.
Absolutely. Referees. Referees, another one as well, Paul. We didn't know who the referees were back in the day. We watched them. They had a black uniform on. They had a whistle, and they refereed it. Now they want to be stars. It's the only stars in football are the football players. When's your next book? And are you working on a next book?
I have to say, at the moment, I'm not working on the next book. It's something I maybe like to do in the future. I'd have to have a really strong idea to put the time in, the research it takes. I really enjoyed this one because it's it's a labour of love. It's the era I grew up with. It'd either be another angle on that or something else that really had my total commitment and interest. At the moment, I'm enjoying doing the blog, just researching different bits and pieces of football history. I've just done one about the 1982 World Cup, which is the first World Cup I remember as well. I think it had some great games, great memories from that. I just like picking up different bits and pieces of football history wherever I can, and doing a bit of research and doing a little feature on the blog is a good way to keep that ticking over. But I'm certainly not ruling out writing another one in the future.
Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. And finally, give another shout out to your website, to your social medias, and where people can go and buy your wonderful book, Before the Premier League, A History of the Football League's Last Decades. And guys, it is a beautiful little book. It's got everything in there. It's got interviews, there's lots of stories, there's lots of factual information. It's a book that you should be very, very proud of. And if I ever do a book, well, I won't because I'm not intelligent enough, but it would be something similar to your book in the way that you've written it. Factual information, stories and interviews as well. So well done, and thank you very much, Paul Whittle.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your kind words. And yeah, you can buy the book and also find a little bit more information about it on my blog, which is called The 1888 Letter. So it's at the1888letter.com/book. But the 1888letter.com's got different features anyway. That's my blog, mainly about same era, pre-Premier League English football. I'm on Twitter at 1888letter, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Before the Premier League.
Well done, mate. Superb. Be very, very proud of what you've done. Thank you so much for your time, and it's back to Andy now.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, and there we go. Back to you and me, mate. That was a fantastic 20 minutes or so with Paul talking about that wonderful book, Before the Premier League. And for anybody listening from Sky, yes, football was invented before 1992. We have evidence.
Yeah, no, it's great to talk about the history of football. And my link to that then, will be on the next book, is going right back to the early 1900s. There was a book that came out about Newcastle United and the Great Days by David Potter, and it talks about the years from 1904 to 1911. And as we all know, Newcastle's a football mad city, but they really did dominate football in those early years. They won the league 3 times in 5 years. There was various near misses as well around the cup, but they were considered the best team in the world, and that was in around that period. So so it's a period that of course will never get mentioned on Sky Sports. They will talk about how Newcastle have been reinvented with all the money they're going to suddenly have now. But football was invented a long time before that, and again, one of those iconic teams that this is where football books. This is the joy of football books. It remembers those great teams that no one, will know about really, unless you read fascinating books like this one, written by David Potter. And again, that comes out. That was out through Pitch Publishing. So we did a feature. I've done a feature post on my website around that particular book as well. So
there was 2 teams that were deemed world champions, unofficial world champions, of course, because we never had any tournament in those days to define who the world champions were. But Newcastle at that time and Aston Villa as well were undisputed champions of the world. We had 2 really fabulous sides, 2 great sides, and they do get overlooked. But I do love the history of football, and that's the beauty of these books, that brings the history to life. And another book that does bring history to life, Seasons in Hell by Neil McCreary and Neil Thornton, British footballers killed in the Second World War. That sounds like a fantastic book. I do love my history. I don't know much about it, but I do like to look at it. That comes out through Pen and Sword Books, who really focus on if you ever go on their website, they focus a lot on history, not just football, not just sport, but history in general, world wars, etc. But they do some cracking books where they do it on football, and they focus on the very early days. But that particular one, the British footballers that were killed in the Second World War. So and a tragic book, of course, but also an interesting book as well, which recalls that time. But they write some great books. They've written another one
recently around the greatest footballer of the time, whose name escapes me, but it will come back to me. But yeah, Pen and Sword books.
Yeah,
I have a knack of doing those great stories.
Yeah, that's the thing. There are that many books and that many players that you'd never heard of that were absolute superstars of their time, and brings me nicely to another couple of books in the Aston Villa connection. I am a Birmingham City supporter. I did put a post on Twitter yesterday because I know the managing director of Birmingham City, and I seen Edward and had a chat, and I put a post up on Twitter. Best wishes to Edward and all at Birmingham City. My God, did I get trolled.
Really?
Oh, my. We had to block a few. Couldn't believe the abuse that I received. But there you go.
Strange, isn't it?
Oh,
it's strange,
Birmingham City football supporters. Some of them, not all of them, some of them are great. Some of them, like all supporters, are a sandwich short of a picnic. But I think...
I mean strange in terms of, I find it odd when you see some just people get really offended, don't they? And they come out on social media and they just hide behind that computer and just throw things at you. I've had a couple just talking about football.
I know most of them. Some of them were my family.
Right, that's a bit different then.
Yeah, absolutely. But I did put a post. I've done one with Keith Birchin, Legends of the 70s. Keith's a great lad. And we've just remastered that along with, we've just done the recent one with John. And I posted that up today. Absolutely nothing from Birmingham City fans. They're not, right. If I post anything about Villa or Edward that owns Birmingham City, I get dog's abuse. If I post anything about Birmingham City, former players, absolutely not a sausage. So here's a couple of books from Aston Villa greats. Jonathan Northoll, forward by Claire Taylor, MBE, The Life and Death of Andy Ducat. And a fantastic read of the fella who was a Villa captain in 1920. A tremendous book, and sadly on a fateful day at Lord's in 1942 he had a heart attack at the crease. But what a great read. And Colin Browne's book, The Armistice Day Killing the Death of Tommy Ball and the Life of the Man Who Shot Him. So just fantastic books.
Remarkable.
They are. I mean, there's a story that I've come across. It's actually one of my ex-wife, her granddad. He was captured during the Russian Revolution while he was fighting for the Tsar against the Red Army. He got captured. He got put in prison. He had a stay of execution on numerous occasions. When they let him go out into the yard, he found a football. I don't know how he found the football, but he did. They realised that he was a damn good football player, and he ended up playing for Moscow. And got a medal. He was a top scorer. And then when he come back to England, he played for Halesoe Town, which nicely ties it into Tom, my stepson, on his bed here. Halesoe Juniors is the manager of their under-18 floodlit team. So, 100 years ago, and there's still a little bit of Halesoe in the Yelts in our family. So I'm going to do a podcast with a historian at Halesoe. And I just think it's a fabulous story. Again, another wartime story, and someone that was pretty much, not death row, but he certainly was facing the death penalty by the Red Army, and lived to tell the tale 100 years ago. Absolutely fantastic football stories.
Yeah, and you just mentioned it, the Armistice killing. So, again, I featured that one as well. So that's a dramatic story, and it is just about 100 years ago. I think it was 1923, in fact. So with that fateful meeting, that was, you mentioned they had the all-star team, wasn't it, Aston Villa? And Andy Ducat was part of that. Yeah. But obviously that book talks about the death of, it's the death of the only English professional footballer deemed by law to have been murdered, and that was Tommy Ball. But his killer was a man called George Stagg. He was a former soldier and a policeman who became his landlord and his neighbour, and apparently they had a difficult relationship. But just again, tragic story, but it's a fascinating story as well. So, and as that book is very diligent in his research, Colin Browne, to look into that and try and go and uncover a bit more. But even on the back of that book, some of the picture, the Aston Villa players are carrying the coffin of Tommy Ball, and Andy Ducat's in that picture of that. In that particular one. But yeah, just incredible stories, isn't there? From that time.
They're fantastic stories that should be told. And although I do joke that I don't read the books, I still buy them, and I buy them for reference, and in the hope that one day I can retire and I'd love to be able to make podcasts and read books and do something in the game. It probably will never happen, but the books are there just in case. So thank you to all the writers that write these fantastic publications. Another book that really has caught my fancy, and again, I notice everything on your social media sites, The Longest Winter by Mark Hodgkinson, a season with England's worst ever football team. Again, early 70s, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's that comes out in August, I think it is. So when that's next month now, isn't it?
It's July,
isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. So the season starts next month as well, doesn't it?
Who was the worst ever team?
It was Rochdale. So the book I think refers to the Rochdale team. Yeah, the 1973-74. They considered the worst team, worst in the football league. Yeah.
Did they get relegated then that year?
Well, it says they finished bottom of the third division, so winning just twice in 46 league matches. They closed the season with, this is unbelievable, they closed the season with a 22-game winless run and played one home match in front of their lowest ever post-war crowd. So,
but I suppose if we're going to, sorry to talk over you, but if we're going to talk about the worst team ever, I get the worst record of a team ever, but surely there was 22 worse teams than them because they were in Division 4. At least they were in Division 3.
Yeah, true, yeah, absolutely. But apparently that season, 32 players played for that team, and many of them were actually drafted in from amateur or even Sunday league clubs. So, it's interesting. It says The Longest Winter is basically, it's a piece of forensic social history, as is a sports book, and it looks a fascinating read. So it's written by a guy called Mark Hodgkinson, and I know he's written books before. I've read his previous book, which was, again, it was based on Rochdale. It was called The Overcoat Men.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was the same guy, which is a great book as well. So The Longest Winter, that'll be an interesting read from an interesting time, isn't it? So, but it was a time when, I'm just reading it now, so the Arab and Israel war had sent all the energy prices soaring, the petrol was scarce, and officers were limited to... Sorry? Well, it's weird, isn't it? Yeah, we've gone full circle, haven't we? But the officers were limited to a temperature apparently of 17 Celsius and power cuts were frequent. So, the 3-day working week came in as inflation took hold. So it's weird. It is exactly now. So, The Longest Winter has many parallels with now. Yeah,
next winter. We're going to have
next
power
winter.
cuts. We got no Prime Minister. Even the Prime Minister's buggered off.
I wonder which team's going to be the worst team next season, because there'll probably be a book in 40 years' time then.
I just hope it ain't mine. The dog's abuse that Edward and I will get on social media if we're the worst.
Likewise.
Long winter will be unbearable. And another one, talking and touching upon World Cups, Blood on the Crossbar by Reese Richards, the Dictatorship World Cup, Argentina 78.
Yeah, that comes out in September, doesn't it? So again, for Pitch Publishing, they do write some great books, don't they? I don't know how they managed to get these, but it's the story of the most controversial World Cup of all time, as they say. So when Argentina They both hosted and won that World Cup, didn't they, in '78? And it was just 2 years after the Coupe de... I always say this wrong. Coupe de...
It was the Hunter, wasn't it? The Junta, Hunter.
That's it.
Pronounce it. That run Argentina. That brutal regime in those days. I remember Alberto Tarantini, listening to him on a broadcast. I think one of the top men at the Hunter, went to shake his hand, so he grabbed his own testicles, rubbed them round, and then shook his hand. I mean, a lot of Argentinians ended up in the bottom of the River Plate, didn't they? With that brutal regime. They got the World Cup. I don't know how. There was that infamous game against Peru. I think the Peruvian goalkeeper was born in Argentina. They needed to win by, I think it was 6 goals, and they did. Don't take anything away. Argentina were a great team. I loved Leopoldo Luque, Osvaldo Ardiles, Mario Kempes played up there. Alberto Tarantini come to Birmingham. Keith does talk about Alberto in the latest podcast. A great little story about Alberto and the language barrier. Passarella as well was another player in that Argentinian team. I think Rennie Houseman was another player. They had a lot of good players, Argentina, and I think Johan Cruyff definitely didn't go. Now there's 2 schools of thought. One, that he didn't go on political grounds because Johan was a little bit like that. The other one was a story about his wife wouldn't let him go because he got found in a bath in 1974 with some bird.
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
So you can take your pick what one you decide to believe.
That's it. But even at Argentina too, you had Ardiles, didn't you, as well?
Yeah, I think.
Ozzy Ardiles. And then then he went to Tottenham after that? I'm trying to remember now. So,
I mean, you had Ricardo Villa.
Yeah, of course.
He went to Tottenham with Ozzy. And Alberto come to Birmingham City and played for us. Sir Alf Ramsey was the manager at the time at Birmingham. But I mean, Alberto's hair was the one. I mean, he's bald now. I don't think he's got a head of hair on it, bless him. But he's on Twitter as well, Alberto, and I do link him into a few things because I do look at the pictures of Birmingham City in the 78, 79, 77, 78, 79 seasons. They had Keith, we had Trevor, we had Alberto Tarantini, Tony Evans was about. We had a lot of perms. There was a lot of hair going on back in the late 70s at Birmingham. And Alberto had this wonderful mass of hair. And there was a lovely picture of him and his wife, and she'd just given birth to a child whilst he was playing in Birmingham. So one of his kids is definitely English. And that was, I wonder if he's any good at football. I wonder if Gareth could call him up. Mind you, he doesn't need another right back, let's be honest. He's got an abundance of them, hasn't he, Gareth? Yeah. And he can play 26 players, or not all at the same time, but he can choose to take 26 players. And Gareth does like a right back, so I'm guessing that's probably where the extra 3 will come from. And
it'll be an interesting book, that one, though. So it was certainly dogged by allegations of bribery, wasn't it? And
absolutely.
Failed drug tests and what have you. So, but the writer, the author of that book that comes out is Reese Richards. I know he's been published in the likes of The Guardian. I know he's written for these Football Times and the Football Pink as well. I don't know if you're aware of them.
The
Football History Boys. Yeah, the Football History Boys as well, who have done their own separate books as well. So it'll be an interesting book again. As we've talked in this podcast, there's a great theme around the World Cup at the moment, isn't there? So
another book about the World Cup. Chris Evans, not the DJ Chris Evans, but the journalist Chris Evans, How to Win the World Cup. It's out on the 21st of July, so a little bit later this year. How to Win the World Cup. I wonder if you'll send one to Gareth.
Well, he actually features on the front of the book, which is interesting.
Oh, okay.
It's got him pointing out, but I think that's got. He's been in touch with me actually, Chris Evans. So I'm awaiting a copy of that book, which is I'm looking forward to. I know it comes out in a couple of weeks' time. At the back end of July, it's coming out through Bloomsbury.
How many books do you get sent?
Oh, good question. So, this week I've been sent by. In fact, I've got it here in front of me. This was a book that's been sent to me, The Fields of Wonder, but the incredible story of Northern Ireland's journey in 1982 World Cup, which has come to me via Black and White Publishing, I think it is. But in answer to your question, it's the Blackstaff Press. Sorry, to get that right. That's who the publisher are of that particular book. I'd probably get, at the moment, 1-2 books maybe sent to me a week. And I can't read that quick, even though I love my football books. But it differs, really. Some weeks I'll get quite a few books. I might get a few that are sent to me in one go, and I'll do feature articles. So, for example, Pitch might send me 4 in one go. And I'll, over a month, probably, 1 or 2 a month. So my room
publishers.
Quite often find a but occasionally through the authors as well, directly. So especially if it's independently published, I get their books sent to me as well. But if you ask my wife, it's obviously far too much, and I don't know where we're going to put them all. So I've got to get another bookcase or another house to
or
put all these
wife.
books in. Well, that's
I haven't got either. Well, I have got a wife, but at the moment she's in Bournemouth, so I can do what the hell I like. I have no bookcase or bookshelves because she won't allow me to. I've got my books in Tom's room in a big hole in the wall, and I've got some of my books in a little cabinet downstairs, which I've rebelliously opened, and I'm now looking at it because she isn't here. But no, I can't have any bookshelves. So I
must say it's been a great flip side for me. Obviously, I love my football books, and obviously it was never my intention when I did the website. It was to recommend books, but I suppose I never realised how many. Well, I had a feeling there was lots of people out there who read football books as well. So when I did for example, the Twitter page, which is probably where I get most of my interaction, I don't know. I wasn't really bothered about how many followers I've got, whether I'm 1 or 10 or 100. It wasn't. But I now got over 7,500 followers.
Wow!
Because
how many
of that, well, no, thankfully,
all I get on Twitter is abuse. I mean, I've never had a book sent to me from a publisher apart from David Lane, Legends Publishing. David has sent me a number of books. Roy Cavanagh, Colin Abbott, Paul Whittle. Yeah. We have had a number of books sent to me from the writers. But Pitch, they don't even answer my texts.
Right. I see. I'll have to get you in touch with them. So I think through the time, the amount I've promoted their books. So I like to think I've helped in some way promote the football books in general, because I'm a big. Although I think I've said this before, not just reading. Obviously my chosen subject is football, but I do believe reading is a very. I'm talking to. I'm still going to convert yourself into reading, but I think reading is an important. And it helps you learn, of course. You do it obviously differently for the podcast as well, but reading football books builds up your knowledge, etc. So what I was just going to then is I've been quite lucky, really, that because I do the website and the Twitter and Facebook, etc. That people send me books, so I could promote their books, and then I get a book. So which I do purchase books to be clear as well, my own myself, but it obviously helps if someone sends it to me.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll give them what we'll do now. We're gonna be ruthless. Unless you send us a book, we ain't gonna give you a mention. So next podcast could be about 20 minutes.
It could be. So but it's what is timing quite neatly, and definitely because I've been reading for years and years and years. There's no doubt the quality of books. And the range of stories just gone up and up and up and up. And I don't know. And I think it might be linked. I don't know if it is linked to COVID. I sometimes think about. But the quality of the books, especially Pitch, they produce really good quality books. And you mentioned Dave Lane at Legends, isn't it? So
brilliant.
They produce brilliant books, and I do understand what you mean in terms of the look quality, don't they? The look quality. Because I have friends that come round and they look at the book and go, wow, look at that, it's amazing. So they do. For me, they're almost like ornaments sometimes, aren't they? They look really good.
Yeah, I'm looking
there
at
on the table.
Book here with Aston Villa, the big Aston Villa book of the 70s. Gideon Andy. There's a picture of Villa. Obviously, it's 1977 because they've got the League Cup. And Browne Little and Andy Gray are in the team, so it isn't 1975. It's 77. And then a picture of the great Andy Lockhead there. Looks like Ian Ross, who's just pulling the trigger, former Liverpool player. But is it Villa players? Oh, beg your pardon, it's Jeff Howden. That ain't Jeff Howden, is it? Andy Lockhead, no. Jeff Howden. Oh, no, that's the picture up there. No, it's not. No, it doesn't say who those are on the front, but no, there's a picture of the Aston Villa team, and it is a fantastic book. Copyright 2016, so this book's been out for some time, but it goes all through Aston Villa of the 70s, all the games that they played in the 70s. It then goes on about the players that played in the 70s, appearances and the programmes of pre-season friendlies. Oh, it's a fantastic... Colin Abbott, a mate of mine, he's a fantastic writer. And this is the kind of book that I want for legends of the 70s. Or certainly, I'd like to do one of the legends of the 70s with a podcast I do. I'd also like to do one, England's 100 games of the 70s. A complete record of England in the 70s. All the lineups of the under-21s, the under-23s that started. I think the last game at under-23s in the 70s was 1976. And then I think 77 they started the 21s. And I think there was 35 games of under-23s. He's a great runner, is he? Sorry, I'm interrupting you. No, Uddy played 10, but he had 2 abandoned, so strictly speaking, he played 8 games for the under-23. So I've got all the records. And I also like the recorded books, and when I say that, like the recorded moments, like for instance, instead of like reading, which the cool kids and all the of the European Cups and that, but I like to see like who won it in 1970, 69, 70, 70, 71, who the goal scorers and just that factual information of it, and perhaps a story by a player. So it's something that, it's a project that I am working on and I could do with a lot of help. But I have got a lot of books. I mean, I could pass you the books on so you could read them.
I'm sorry, this is still on the way.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can grab Carlos into that, because he's really good at writing, and I'm not. I'm not too bad at talking. I know a lot of players. So I could just say, here's the phone number, talk to Alan Upton, and then just write the book. And I do nothing.
There's talented people out there, and there's some of the best autobiographies of footballers. Of obviously, it almost, you kind of think that it's brilliant because obviously a lot of people are not that naive to think footballers are great writers, but football autobiographies are made great because of great writers.
Absolutely.
And they really bring it to life. So what could be a relatively mundane kind of career is made to sound incredible. Well, they normally are incredible as well, but if you get a good writer, it really can transform the pages.
Mind you, the Working Man's Ballet, Alan Hudson's book. Alan wrote that all on his own.
Yeah, there is exceptions, of course.
Yeah, Uddy does write all his own books.
Yeah, absolutely.
He gave it to one of his Cypriot mates and says, Alan, my English is better than yours.
Excellent.
But no, super.
I'll link there to Aston Villa, you referred to it. There's a couple of books. There's one coming out next month in August. There's Aston Villa, The Complete Record, which is coming out by guys called Rob Bishop and Frank Holt.
I know Rob, good lad.
Yeah. So he's a former editor of the Villa News and Record.
Yeah, the programme.
Matchday magazine. Yeah, that's it.
Rob.
So that's contained in. So it's going since their formation in 1874.
Absolutely correct.
Something like that. Is that right?
1874.
Goodness knows I remember that. But anyway, but I do. So
under it goes under the gaslit lamp in Aston.
Yeah, absolutely. But that book's coming out next one. So it's an encyclopedia of everything to do with Aston Villa. So obviously it includes European Cup in 1982, but it includes, just looking at it, includes the profiles of more than 150 of Villa's leading players and a spotlight on the club's managers, from Jimmy McMullen to Dean Smith, and a selection of matches to remember. So that'll be interesting. And the player that's coming out in September, keeping just with the Villa connection, there's a book coming out in September, and you guessed it, it's coming out with Pitch, is the Full Morty. So Dennis Mortimer.
How did you know that?
So is that what you were going to mention?
Yeah, it was, yeah. How did you get that? Did Richard tell you?
No, I just know I just saw the book that's coming out. No, I looked on Pitch's website. And I saw that,
Picture promoting it now, are they?
Yeah, sorry, yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Okay. Because I asked Richard if I could give it a shout. Because he done the he'll kill me. There's
Richard Seidman.
Yeah, Richard Sydenham.
Yeah, Sydenham. Sorry, he did Ticket to the Moon.
That's it, Ticket to the Moon. The ELO song. And I've done a podcast which is on all the social media platforms, etc., and all the podcast platforms as well. Ticket to the Moon, Richard Sydenham, great book, great writer, good lad. He hosts a few events as well at the sports bar at Wollaston. Do you know who gave him that title? Because I've done a number of pods with Dennis. Dennis Mortimer is a great lad. And,
I don't know.
Yeah, it was Andy Blair.
Was it? Okay.
Andy Blair gave him the Full Morty. What a great title! And there's another brilliant title. I love this as well. Cock a Hoop, the Les Cocker story. Robert Endicott.
Yeah,
Robert Endicott and Dave Cocker, his nipper, have worked on that one.
Yeah,
but the Full Morty is going to be a great book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dennis is a great lad.
Yeah, that comes out in a couple of months' time. Yeah, in September. So that's how I know about it. So it's published, promoted obviously on Pitch's website. So I think what's really good, I think you've mentioned it before as well. If you ever want to see what books are coming up, if you ever buy in the magazine, When Saturday Comes, they have on the back of a magazine. I've got it here next to me. They always have on the back of it. Pitch will have promote all their books with an image of everything that's coming out as well. So it's always
is that on there recap. As well? Is the Full Morty on that?
I've got it here.
Because I haven't got the World Soccer. I get 440. You know, I buy the magazines. I never read them. And blimey, it's another month. And the books just fly off. And I never, the magazines, I never read them.
Yeah.
But I haven't got the most recent ones.
No, it's not got it on here. I think this looking at the back, it looks more recent, around May, June, and maybe July. It's got Les Cocker Hoop on the back, but I think it'll probably be on the next one, on next month's When Saturday Comes.
Yeah.
So great book, great books from Pitch. So. And can I link that to another one then, actually, on the Pitch as we're talking of them?
You can link anything you like.
So I was sent, it's called, I think I might have mentioned it after our last broadcast, but it's Brawls, Bribes and Broken Dreams. It's how Dundee almost won the European Cup. So it's written by Graham Strachan. It's written, forward by the great Patrick Barclay. Yeah. And it's when they, Dundee were the punch-drunk underdogs when they chased European Cup glory after winning the league in 1962. AC Milan, Benfica and Real Madrid were at the peak of their powers, and Ipswich would represent England after they won the league under Ralph Ramsey. Dundee were about to enter a new world of glamour, so it talks about how, it's just one of these remarkable, again, I use the phrase Cinderella story, again, one that's just, a great read, certainly for fans of a bit of nostalgia, let's say. And who would have thought Dundee would have ever got that close?
Gilly would have played for them in them days, wouldn't he?
Yes,
Like Alan Gilzine.
Yeah,
and Paddy Barclay is a big Dundee supporter. Dens Park, isn't it? Dundee. Yeah. Because then you got Tannadice over the road at Dundee, literally over the road at Dundee United.
Literally. Yeah, absolutely. Literally around the corner, isn't it? So, that come out. It's a couple of months now. Back in May, that come out. So, another interesting story out from them.
I'm looking at another book. Hold on, just to interrupt you there, briefly.
Yeah.
So Matt Busby, the man who made the football club, Paddy Barclay.
Yeah.
His book.
Yeah.
So that's jumping out. Just dropped it as well, but there you go. I'm trying.
Just jumped out and fell over.
I'm trying to multitask. I'm so glad that's a paperback.
Yeah.
But what a great writer Paddy Barclay is. His knowledge. Yeah. All these writers, they're just so cool, so intelligent, so knowledgeable. Makes you sick, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. He's wrote some great books, not just about Busby. He did one on the lifetimes of Herbert Chapman. I remember as well reading that.
I've got that book, not read it.
Yeah.
I've got it.
No, great front cover on there.
I love the front covers of all my books.
So you'll have to look inside from time to time, But anyway, it's a great one that about Herbert Chapman. So he was obviously the boss of the old Conquering Arsenal team, was it, in 1930s, before that, Huddersfield.
Another book, Eddie Hapgood, by his daughter. Eddie played in that team, didn't he? The 30s Arsenal.
Yeah. I've not read that book, I must admit myself, but I've seen it.
No, I haven't got it neither, I have to say.
Yeah, so his daughter Lynn Hapgood, off my top of my head memory, I think it is. It's
her name's certainly Hapgood.
Yeah, yes, definitely Hapgood. Yeah, that's correct.
Well, you would, wouldn't you? I mean, even if you got married, you would just keep that name because,
it's a great name.
if your dad's a legend like that, you don't want to lose that name, do you? But we did talk about Johan Cruyff earlier. There's another book, Always on the Attack, by Uki Koch.
Yeah.
I don't know how you say it, but it's K-O-K.
Yeah. That came out again, I think it was a couple of months ago, I think it was, wasn't it?
How do you pronounce the fella's name, Andy?
I'm going to go with either Cook or Koch, one of them. So,
K-O-K.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah. I know he's a very well-known, very established football writer, obviously from the Netherlands. So, but it's not a book I've come across, but I've seen great reviews of it. It's a book I have come across, but I haven't read it myself, but I've seen lots of great reviews about it. So, Because
Johan's got another book in My Turn, his autobiography.
Yeah, I enjoyed that myself.
Yeah, Hudson did as well. Uddy read it twice. I ain't read it once yet. I've got it again. I'm looking at it there. I've got there Rob Stein, the Mavericks on top, different class. Laurie Cunningham, Diego Maradona, Pele, the double team from Tottenham, Stan Bowles, Di Stefano, Pele, Billy Wright, Dixie Dean. I'm going through all my books there. I ain't read none of them. But I did read The Hungarians. I thought that was a great book. I think that's the last book I read about 2 years ago. It's your fault. You've been phoning me up. I'm asking you to make a podcast.
There's too many books out there, I must say. There is.
Fabulous. You spoiled. Seriously, though, on a serious note, you are spoilt for choice, aren't you? I look at them and I think, what book shall I read next? Steve Perryman's book, what a book that is. It's not just a book, it's a work of art. And I just look and I just think, where do I start? I just have, I must have, I don't know, hundreds of books, and I just don't know where to start. And then I want to do a podcast, so I start researching. I'm doing another podcast with Keith about Birmingham City and Aston Villa. He scored the winning goal when Blues beat Villa 1st of October 1977. And he thought, well, I'll just go out on the pitch and just see what it's like. He said, I walked out and there's about 500 fans on the pitch fighting. He said, I thought they took this a bit serious.
Another book I'll mention, which came out, and I was sent a copy. It came out through, I think it's more self-published, for Tone Red Days, but it's a book on Walsall's Greatest.
Yes.
Tony Richards, and the Sadler's Glory Years. So it's written by Gary Richards. I'm pretty, must be related. I think it might be his son. I've been meaning to check, actually. Okay. So, but it's related to the Sadler's Glory Years, the days when Walsall Football Club, not Manchester City, were Liverpool's league rivals. And it talks about at the end of the 1953-54 season, Walsall finished bottom of the 3rd Division South, and they actually applied for re-election to the Football League for the 3rd consecutive year. And 5 months or so later, the manager, Frank Buckley, offered, he was 20-year-old at the time, Tony Richards, a 4-week trial, and it just takes you from there, really. So from in pre-season, though, the club went from playing 4th Division League match in front of just under 2,000 people at Gateshead to facing Liverpool at Anfield in front of 40,000 in the 2nd Division. So and it's interesting book, and it's testimony from Walsall players as well. So, but yeah, they've let that phrase is a legend thrown about quite a lot, but he's certainly in Walsall terms, he's without question a Saddler's legend. So, yeah, a really well presented book as well. So, great cover. The pictures are black and white, but you've got him, Tony Richards. It's black and white apart from his shirt, which is in red. It really stands out. So, again, looks really, eye-catching. And if you can get it right as well on the book, it makes you want to read it, doesn't it? So, and it's got lots of great reviews on the back of it as well, including the Express and Star.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So I don't think it's available publicly. I'm pretty sure it's not on Amazon or anything like that, but it's available through the Walsall FC's online store. Unless that's the plan initially. Sometimes they do that. They want to get it promoted locally, through the football club. So there's almost exclusivity.
Unusual though that football clubs do that, because most football clubs don't want to know about those books because they're not earning dough from it. That's interesting.
Good point. Yeah, it's a good point you say that, and I find you're absolutely spot on there. And I think you find probably with the smaller clubs further down, they do maybe, because I know there's like Wimbledon, AFC Wimbledon. They've done similar books, and again, it's promoted through the club. But yeah, like Manchester City, Man United, books are just not. They're not going to create the money, are they? When they just run about creating the 5th different shirt they've had in 2 seasons or whatever. So yeah, in another strange colour.
In a sad way that it is. I mean, I remember when I used to go on local radio, and Malcolm Boyden, the host, he just wrote his book, Brum's the Word. Birmingham City wouldn't have it in the shop. There was a piece that Carl Chin had wrote about Doug that wasn't particularly nice, but Villa were the only club that allowed Malcolm to put his book in their club shop and sell it from there. Karen Brady said, we ain't having it in there because if someone's coming in with a tenner, we want that to go into our till, not anybody else's. And I do think that's not a slant at Karen. That's the way that most people in football look at it. They want everything in their pockets, and well done, Walsall Football Club, to do that. When you say Frank Buckley, is that Major Buckley, the legendary Major Buckley? I'm sure he was a Walsall manager.
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, absolutely. So, but that's another book. A couple of us I'll give a shout out as we're talking. Is that came around about the same time. There was one that's come out from because the times did quite well with the Women's European Championships kicking off last night at Old Trafford with England. Is unsuitable. It's called Unsuitable for Females. And it's about the rise of the Lionesses and women's football in England. It's written by Carrie Dunn, who is arguably one of the great writers, certainly on women's football. She's written a number of books. People have written. But if you go on Amazon, the one of these that really sticks out, kind of thing. So, but it's all about the history, throughout the years, and obviously when in 1921 the FA introduced a ban on women's football. So that's where the title comes from, Unsuitable Females, and obviously that stayed in place for 50 odd years.
They did,
and then it changed, and women's football, it was struggling to have a match to man's game. It's certainly got more popular, hasn't it, over the years? So, but this book tells a story of women's football in England since the 19th century inception through pen portraits of its trailblazers, legends of the game. Yeah.
One of the biggest trailblazers in women's football is Northern last named Lily Parr. One of the greats, and player that plays with Dick Kerr Ladies, who you could argue are the greatest female side ever to play football. And they used to play. They were a munitions company, and they played pretty much to raise money for the war effort. and then after they got banned, women's football got banned from every FA affiliated football ground in the country. So that was nice for the war effort, that all the money that they raised. They got banned, but now they're not, and rightly so. And what I don't like with women's football is the comparison to men's football, and I do see a lot of articles saying that Ellen White, if she scores X amount of goals, beats Wayne Rooney's 53. And I'm like, come on, give your heads a wobble. The women's game is a women's game, and it's great. I watched them last night. I didn't think they played that well, but I'm a big fan of Ella Toone. I think she's fantastic. Lauren Hemp, I think she's a player. I think that I like that Kira Walsh that plays midfield. I think that we've got some fabulous players, such great composure on the ball.
Absolutely.
Georgia Stanway, I thought she looks a player. I think we've got some really, and I used to be the stadium announcer at Birmingham City Ladies many years ago.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I used to do that with Marcus Bignett, and going back to the problem that Marcus has had, I'd run through a brick wall for Marcus. What a great lad. And all my friends there at Birmingham City Ladies, we had a great time, and I've never met so many wonderful people. And so I've got a lot of time for women's football, but I just do wish that they would focus on their game. And it isn't the women, it's the clever, or the people, the young uns that write these journalists, and they're looking for stories, and they're trying to get the comparison stories, and I don't think it does their game any favours.
Yeah, and the women's football not asked for a lot of these comparisons. It's unfair. I don't know why I think there's still a little bit of a stigma, isn't it? I don't know if it even goes back to those 50 years it was banned, but you don't get the same kind of comparison, let's say, in tennis, do you? So, Wimbledon being at the moment, you don't 100%. Necessarily say Djokovic is better than Serena Williams. It's just looked differently. It's too different because the way they're women are built and men are built, it's never going to be the same. So I don't understand in football why they do that. They definitely, you're spot on what you say there. So
I think
that it doesn't happen in
trying to talk up the game, and money's been put into the game, and it's great. And I do like to watch them play. I mean, I've got it on now. Norway are smashing Northern Ireland 3-0. I'm not sure where the game's played, but there's not many fans inside the ground. So women's football, apart from England and some of the bigger teams in their own nations, can't command the same amount of fans as the men's game. But what you've got to do is look at it. The women's game's the women's game. The men's game is completely different. My lads played against England in 2005 when they were preparing for the Euros that was in England in 2005. And it was the Floodlit team, the under-18s, and a lot of my players played in that game, and they come off and they say, blimey, they're not physical. And to be truthful, if it weren't for a couple of the lads that were a bit strong and pacey, they'd have probably got a draw out of that game. But women, their game is based on different skills to the men's, and let's leave it. Let's appreciate it. Let's enjoy and love both games, and let's not compare. So, and
I tell you what stands out for me, just on that point as well. I went to my daughter. She loves the football, so and she's only 8, kind of thing. She loves football as well. And I wanted, I love it when she's involved in football. We went to see Nottingham Forest Ladies against Derby County, and it was good, really quick as well. And there's just cracking football. Some of them, there's no doubt. Many of those players are better than in the men's, lower leagues. I mean, Sunday League. You know what I mean? Again, I don't want to go. I'm almost doing the comparison thing, which you shouldn't do because we've just been talking about that. But they're good in their own right, and they're obviously it's a different game, isn't it? But it's good. It's good to watch.
There's a lot of skill, and I think it's people that don't watch the women's game that don't understand how skillful it is. But I've been watching it. I mean, I haven't watched it much recently, I'll be honest. But when I was involved, I watched an awful lot, and I was surprised how really skillful some of the players are. And I don't compare, but what I used to say is, if a ball was falling into the penalty area for Birmingham City, I'd rather it fall to the feet of Karen Carney than Nicola Zigic, because technically she's a better player than him. Technically,
you're right.
It's completely different, but the skill aspect of it, you look at them and you just think that Kira Walsh, she's a player. I really think she can be developed. I thought that she was just a little bit edgy last night, but I would just say to her, keep playing that ball forward and getting up and support that second ball, because I think there's a real player. And to be fair, I'd rather watch Kira Walsh than Declan Rice.
Yeah.
I'm not saying she's a better player, and if you put her in the men's team, she'd be better. But technically, I would prefer to watch her. I think she's more of an artist than he is.
Yeah.
And that's how
absolutely.
I compare, not like for like.
Yeah, agreed. And what I would do is just linking on to that, as we're talking about women's football, related it as well. Women's writing, let's say, of football, because that book I was referring to is written by Carrie Dunn, a great female football writer. There's another book that did come out again last month, or maybe May actually, and it's called The Year of the Robin. I was sent a copy by a lady called Jen Offord, and she's a massive Charlton fan. So it writes about her love for it's the subtitles, watching it all go wrong for Charlton Athletic and the world. So and again, I've seen great reviews of the book. So, but it's about for now. What it says on the back, she says, for now at least, the club that we love, and I hope one day my child will love too. Had averted disaster. Life as a Charlton fan could be pretty miserable sometimes. We can all think of our clubs in that way, but we always seem to come through when it mattered, and on this occasion, like the playoff final of a year before, we had something snatched victory from the jaws of defeat rather than vice versa. But it's by a lady called Jen Orford. So it's a book I've not got round to reading, but I wanted to give that a shout out as well. So lovely looking book through another good publisher called Icon Books as well. So that's called The Year of the Robin, and certainly one that Charlton Athletic fans. And what I just mentioned actually, because we'll talk about Walsall, won't we, and how they promote that book. Charlton Athletic have very much promoted that book I'm just referred to as well, on their online, but also they on their Twitter page, on their main page, they shared about it, which is great to see as well. So
while we're still talking, in the women's field, wasn't that a nice looking referee last night?
Yes,
nice looking bird. I mean, we can get our own back now, where the girls use, look at David Beckham and he got nice legs. Well, we say that about the girls, and we're old sexist granddads, ain't we? But that's what they've been doing for years. So it's quite nice to look at footballers and fancy them rather than think other things about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go on, sorry.
No, go on. What else have you got? Because I've gone all through my books. Yeah, I've done. I've done.
Yeah, I'd like to just give a shout out to a few others then. So going back to earlier, I was saying books have been sent. One that's growing in terms of the number of books they do produce is Morgan Lawrence Publishing Services. There's a guy there called Matthew that sends me any book that comes out of him. Matthew Mann, that's it. You've got it. Yeah. So a couple of books he sent to me. One very much for Arsenal fans. It's called The 100 Club, and it's every goal from Arsenal's greatest ever scorers by Nick Browne. It's got a forward by Alan Smith. Yep. It includes the likes of Thierry Henry, Ian Wright, so your more recent ones, but it then goes back to Cliff Baston, and then you've got Dennis Bergkamp. Well, you've got a mixture of them, really. Yeah. So, but a great one for Arsenal fans there, and many of the stories from the Highbury days prior to Emirates Stadium. And also one that came out very recently is The Reality of the Dream, which is Malcolm Christie.
Yes.
The introduction's written by Gareth Southgate, but it's about his unique journey from non-league to the Premier League. So Malcolm Christie grew up dreaming of being a professional footballer, as we all do, but he actually made it. So he was basically just months from stacking shelves, literally stacking shelves. He was playing for Derby County in the Premier League. So it just chronicles this. Yeah, it's an amazing story, really. He became the only person in history to go straight from non-league to scoring in the Premier League and representing his country without ever joining a professional academy. So it's a really interesting kind of story, and it's sad, funny, and often emotional. It's a unique tale. So, but that's what it says in here. Yeah, he's
Gary Birtles must have had a similar journey, you know. Okay,
yeah,
Premier League, I get that. But didn't Gary play for Long Eaton, and he won at Forest Long, and then he played in the game, European Cup game against Liverpool. I think that was his debut, and he scored, didn't he? So I think Gary might have been similar.
Yeah, I wonder if the difference is, I'm not sure, did Gary Birtles play in any kind of academy or anything like that?
I think the difference is, this is the Premier League, and before the Premier League with the Football League, they forget all about their stories.
Yeah, I think
that probably happens. I think that, you know, it's a great story, it's a great journey, but I don't think it's pretty. I mean, it might be unique in terms of Premier League, but got an idea.
Agreed.
I mean, okay, Jamie Vardy was at Fleetwood, wasn't he? But he was going to go and be a holiday rep, wasn't he? And then decided that he was going to stay at Leicester.
Yeah. No, he definitely, going back to Gary Birtles, I know that. He definitely started at Long Eaton, didn't he?
Yeah, he did,
Yeah, 100%. So, because I think Forest signed for him, it was something like £2,000, wasn't it?
Something ridiculous, because Clough had done something similar with Nigel Jempson. Didn't his news agent say, go and have a look at this lad, Jempson?
Yeah.
And then Clough said, I'll go and have a look at him. Peter, let's go and have a... And Cloughy would do that. Because if somebody told Brian of a player, he would go and have a look at him. Whereas, like, you know, Alan Hudson's dad told Bobby Robson about Ian Hutchinson. He'd watched him play against Alan's brother John, and he was playing for Burton, Hutch, and Bobby Robson didn't take any notice. And then eventually Hutch signed for Chelsea. But there are some managers that would listen and go and watch. Cloughy, prime example, and others that wouldn't. But, you know, we're all different and managements are different. But, I think we might find that Gary's journey was very similar to Malcolm's.
Bit of a research. Yeah, research out there for listeners. So look into that as well. But, fascinating story.
Yeah, I could do a Legends of the 70s with Gary Birtles. Now I've got John McGovern's number, and I could ask Gary.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely. And the last book I want to give a shout out to, this was independently published. This author's also had books through Bitch Publishing as well. It's called Jim. The name is Jim Keown. He's a massive Everton fan. He wrote a number of one of the great books of, a couple of years back now, How to Run a Football Club. But he's written loads of Everton stuff as well. But this particular book it's an updated version of a book he'd done before. This is called Post-Punk Football. And what Jim is, what it's written about is very much about the state of football, how it's changed in modern football. You will be definitely nodding away as you read this book. So it's basically the rise of supporter power. The rise of the big clubs and how the game's changed and what have you. But what it does would refer to is the likes of like the FC United of Manchester and FC Wimbledon have been formed through supporter groups, etc. Trying to do something different really to the global dominance.
I quite like the football club talking to the fans, engaging with the fans. I used to be of the opinion that football, like fan ownership with football clubs, is great. But the more that I've got involved in football, the more that I've seen of Birmingham City and our supporters. If I own the football club, I would speak to a number of them, and I'd ignore the majority. Because I think most of them are just idiots.
There you
go. There's another load of trolling. But I think when you get some football fans, like for instance, if I owned Forest I'd be phoning you up and say, Andy, let's get together. Let's get some Forest fans. Let's sit round a table. Let's work together. And with sensible football fans, you can do that. But I've just found with football fans, especially our lot, various groups and Twitter pages, and they all want to be their own kings of their own little kingdom, and they're full of their own self-importance. And I think that if you did that and engage more with them people, I just don't see as you can take it forward. I'm all for input from fans and sensible input and engagement with fans. And I do tend to go down the Simon Jordan route with that. Engage with them, be part of it, but let us run the football club and you can support it. Please be vocal. Please tell us your opinions. We want to listen to them, however stupid some of them may be. We'll listen to you all. But I think there's always got to be a little bit of an us and them, but working together.
Yeah, absolutely, and involving the community as well.
100%. So, I think that football clubs are a massive part of the community. I think that football clubs, to a large degree, especially in these modern times, have forgotten what their community looks like. But I think that football needs to involve itself with that grassroots, with that fan base, with that core support, and be encompassing to all and sundry, and work with all fans. But
everyone.
But again, as I say, from what I've experienced, there are some that I certainly wouldn't be engaging with because I think they're idiots.
And every club has them, don't they, Paul? So,
this is the problem. All the football clubs, my club is no different to any other football club. So if it's happening at Birmingham, it happens at Villa, it happens at Nottingham Forest and at Derby and that. So what you do is you just take the good ones, and there are so many brilliant ones. And again, I know, and I think it's easily or very easy to obtain the intelligent input from fans. It's not that difficult to discover who's the decent ones and who's the ones that are just looking to whether it be feather their own nest or make a name for themselves, or I don't know what their agendas are, but there's lots of them with hidden agendas, and I think that's a bit of
real football fans. They see obviously I'm a big Forest fan, but I love football in general. I've got Derby County are big rivals, and a bit like them going through their troubles now. I'm glad they've got an owner. I'm glad they're not going to go out of existence. That'd be awful. Tony G, of course, about going out of existence. No one really, proper football fans don't want to see that. You want to play the likes of Derby County. I don't want to play them for a good few years. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, kind of thing. Because unless they do get promoted to the Premier League, because hopefully we stay there now. Yeah. But you know what I mean, the principle of it. So you're just, you're football fans, aren't you, in general? So whether it's your rivals or not.
Yeah, keep your passion, keep your rivalry, keep all that. Let's have your input. But let's have, sensible input and, engage with sensible people.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Is there any more books, sir, that you would like to give a mention before we lock up?
No, that's me. So another great time. Hopefully that's provided some people ideas out there. So there's plenty more to come over the next few months, and certainly that build up to the World Cup. I know we touched on quite a few of them there, but there's some great material that's going to be coming out for the next few months. Hopefully that's given a few ideas, and happy reading everyone out there. So there's certainly plenty to choose from.
Absolutely, and a lot of happy reading around the pool with a few sherbets as well.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, absolutely. Well, it's good weather here as well, though, isn't it? If you're not going abroad, so I'm sitting here and it's 9 o'clock and it's still red hot. It feels very warm outside.
Yeah, I'm just going to go out. I'm going to plant a few plants, which is nice. We wouldn't be doing that back in October and November when we were doing our football book corner. But the gardens are looking resplendent, and absolutely. I think we're going to have a lot of double digits overnight and clear skies and 20 plus degrees, touching up to probably 30 for the next couple of weeks. So happy days, and by that time I'm off to Turkey as well. So nice.
Oh, fabulous!
How about yourself? Are you off anywhere this summer?
Not this summer, but that's because we're saving up a little bit. Well, I'm off to Vegas, Las Vegas.
Lovely.
Yeah, in October. So
You're taking the wife with you?
Yeah, yes, we are. Yeah, we're going full for it. So it's our 10th anniversary this year. So
happy
we've gone all out. Thank you very much, and it's a big one for my wife's birthday next year as well. So we've tied it in to do it this year. So to go to the Great Lights of Vegas. So yeah, can't wait for that. That's not till October, but even then, in the desert of Vegas, I think it's still going to be red hot.
Yeah, it will be. July. I've had a couple of weddings in July in the past, so yeah. I like to get rid of July, move into August. Bad memories. So happy 10th anniversary, mate.
Thank you.
We will reconvene in probably 4 to 6 weeks, guys. That's 426, not 46, for part 9. Of Football Book Corner. So happy reading, keep reading, and I think that we've given people a lot of information for books to read while they're on holidays. We're hoping that the aeroplanes will take us, of course, because there's been a lot of cancellations. But happy holidays and happy reading. See you soon.
Happy reading all. Take care. All the best, Paul.
Cheers, pal. Tonight, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
In 2021, Afghanistan fell to the Taliban. The lives of Raha and Marwa, two 20-year-old women and best friends, were forever changed. One decided to stay.
I feel like I'm not in a war zone.
And the other to leave.
We got our tickets today to the Germany.
These are their audio diaries.
I could only carry my body without my soul.
Listen to Inside Kabul wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.